Then there's a number of other pieces. Huh. That's kind of interesting.
We have a lot of old people on this island. It's old.
That is interesting.
Yeah, this one's net impressed. It's a, and you know, it's a net. You can see that the lines and where the lines intersect, there's a little thing, a hole that goes down, and that's where the knots in the net. Yeah, so the knots are deeper than the fibers. Yeah. Those are not very common. That type of decoration here.
So this was intentional,
Yeah, they're
to take the net and press it in?
And
Yeah,
probably
or they-
fishing nets, right?
yeah, they would have
fishing
nets to
nets.
fish with or to catch small animals. You know, I mean, we think of these guys as being hunters, but I mean, easiest way to catch an animal is to trap it. You know, it takes a lot less labor than to go wander around trying to find it and kill it with a bow or a spear. You build snares or nets and catch many more things than you could tracking them down. But it's one of the kinds of fabrics. Eventually, you begin to see, like, I think this piece is just, we would call it, it's cord marked, and they're like the wooden paddles. Eventually, through the early decorations, are just people poking things in the clay, or their fingers. They mash things. There's a type of Tom's Creek that occurs really just around Charleston Harbor, and yeah, they're just taking their fingers and pressing in the sides of the clay. If you put your hands on the shirts today, they're at all the same right distances. You know, this is shallow use that you see on the surface. Then they begin carving wooden paddles, and that tradition comes from the South. Or they begin wrapping the paddles in fabrics.
When you say south, you mean just Savannah or Georgia?
Farther south to Florida, all the way
South
from.
America?
No. There's very little interaction between North and South America. There's the fiber tempered pottery begins to be made on the north coast of South America about 1,000 years after it's being made here. But, you know,
Interesting.
people always want to try to connect them up, but no one's ever found a link in between. So it's probably just people. It's kind of fortuitous. Somebody decides that this works. And it's real easy, actually, much easier to come from there to here than it is to go from here to there, right? Because I mean, the jump from, say, Florida to the islands is very difficult going south because of the Gulf Stream, you know, and coming this way, it'd be real easy. If you come from the islands to Florida, it's much easier because you go at the current. When you go back, you're going against it, so it's real difficult. But there's still very little interaction across that narrow bit of water.
Yeah, and that current is 2+ knots or something.
Yeah. So, anyways, so these fabric or these cord marked, and it's probably Deptford as well. And this is a fabric. It's a woven, some sort of woven material that has been pressed into the clay.
Yeah, I see that.
People think that a lot of times that this is like corn cobs and things. I mean, because it has those sort of linear bands, but it's not. They did impress corn cobs into pots later on when they were growing corn, but it's just a woven fabric. If you looked at it very closely, these little lines, you can see them overlapping each other the way they're pressed into the clay. And those are all, except for the net impress, which has me a little baffled. I'm just not used to seeing that here too much. It's like sand tempered, which I don't know.
So if so many people did the same type of pottery style that got popular and spread around, what can we learn from pottery styles other than that they were a style? I mean, what else can we learn from that?
Well, I mean, we use them primarily now to sort of date, you know, to set time frames for the material that we're looking at. But there's also some of the more elaborate designs and in other areas, which might also happen here. You can actually begin to see individual potters, and like there's several pots that have been made in Georgia and North Florida that were decorated with the same paddle. And that's because the designs are very elaborate that are on there, and the paddle cracked. the wooden paddle cracked, and so you have this
So
break
travel.
in the design.
Yeah.
And so there's like pots that are found on, up around more, I think Sapelo and Otsego Island. And there's these burial mounds in North Florida that have pots that were decorated with the same paddle. And,
That puts a time period.
So
Do you
either
figure
the
the
pots,
pots moved or
One
the
moved or
paddle?
the
or
other.
the paddle moved, that's
Or
a good
the
question.
artist.
That's
Or the artist.
Same question I was gonna ask.
Yeah,
The pots
yeah,
moved or the
that's,
paddles moved?
yeah,
Or the
and
horses
they
are
did the same thing at the same time
took the
period, they have other pots on the other side. Apalachicola River that are found like up around Columbus, and they were decorated with the same paddle as ones that are found on the coast of Florida. And so we don't know if the people are moving that much, you know, I mean, these folks, they don't live in one place at this time, most of the time, they're spending,
It could have been trade and things like
yeah,
that. too.
yeah, they're spending days to weeks in one locale, and then they move because, you know,
Right.
they're consuming resources in an area, gathering stuff, and when.
Was there a summer
it runs
versus
down.
winter drought? Would it account for that
Probably,
movement?
I mean, we think that, you know,
Plus,
we're not-
where's would be the best source of the clay?
I mean, they're fairly local, I mean, there's clay pretty much everywhere.
Here, around
Yeah,
here.
yeah, and I mean, really, the edges of the marsh,
Yeah.
you can get to spaces where there's clays pretty quickly.
I was just thinking.
Several
would-
feet.
Would a lot of pots be made up here that people would come up for? You know, to buy or trade
No,
or was the
There's
clay everywhere?
clay pretty much everywhere. Yeah, there's very little, there is some movement of pots that we've been able to identify, but it seems like it's more, there's a lot from local manufacturer, but people may move. And
Yeah.
there are some things, these examples that I give you about the split paddle is during what we call Swift Creek culture times, which is middle woodland, which correlates with Deptford a little bit here. And we don't see much Swift Creek, it's all farther south. On the Savannah River, there's some up in northern South Carolina, it comes across through central Georgia and in. But those people are also, they're associated and trading with Hopewellian culture, which is in the Ohio River Valley. And there's actually now, there's a site in southeastern Indiana, which is like this giant Swift Creek site. And there's a site that they found just outside of Atlanta now where there's the pottery types that are in Indiana at the same time are in this site in Georgia. And they're actually made out of the clays that are found in those places. So these people have obviously, there's
Artisans.
like a transposition of people there.
Yeah.
And they're still making pottery the way that they want to do it. And they haven't just moved in with, they didn't come south and move in with their neighbors. But Hopewell, that time frame, which is, you know, what, 300 AD, 800, 600 AD or so, there's huge interaction across the eastern United States. Those guys are trading. They're getting obsidian from Yellowstone. Other materials, there's a type of chert flint that they're getting out of North Dakota. They're bringing into Ohio Valley. They have conch shells or whelks that are coming off the Gulf Coast of Florida. And all this material is in mica that's coming out of North Carolina and the mountains of North Carolina. These guys are gathering all this material and trading for it or consuming it and getting it.
Taking it to the mall.
Yeah, yeah, you know, and the people studying those guys, they're of the mind that they might be going to get a lot of it actually. And if these guys, we have these people from Indiana and Georgia, that might be what you have, is like a huge party of people come to get a whole bunch of stuff. Then they're gonna go back and these people from the South ran into them and they have a lot of stuff you want, so you get all these whelk shells maybe and then you pack off to Indiana and trade it to them up there and then come back.
Now, what time period again are we talking about?
That's sort of 200 AD up to about 600 AD or so.
Before our
About 2,000
time.
years ago. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
There's something before I
yeah.
Before the 1600s.